Hello and welcome to post-budget episode of Simply inTAXicating. Corporate residency has traditionally been a bane of contention in the domain of international taxation. The latest area of growing disagreement among most of the tax jurisdictions is the digital economy. With e-commerce companies having good time with no border restrictions, unlike their counterpart in the form of PE, taxing income of e-commerce companies has been a major area of dispute worldwide. With G20 mandating OECD to undertake BEPS project, base erosion and profit shifting project, several recommendations have come up and that are being debated worldwide by most of the tax jurisdictions. Taking a few cues from BEPS report, India has taken a few measures in the Finance Bill 2016. To discuss all these aspects in the domain of international taxation, we have four noted experts with us in the studio. We have Mr. D.P. Sengupta, former Joint Secretary, Foreign Taxation CVDT. We have Mr. Sandeep from PwC. We have Mr. Pinto from Grant Thornton, and we have Palbi from S.R. Modi and Company. So let me start with Mr. Pinto. Please tell us what is your take on some of the measures, a bundle of measures taken by Mr. Arun Jaitley in this finance bill.
I think touching upon the equalization levy, what's important to understand is a little bit of background on these digital companies. If you look at companies like Google or Facebook, and their main source of revenue is through online advertising. Now, the way these companies work is their servers are abroad, their entire technology is housed, their IP is housed overseas, but the income that they are generating is from the ultimate consumers, which are locally based out of India. They're coming to India in hordes to obviously tap into the huge market potential what this country offers. And if that is what is driving their value, then why should India not have the right to sort of tax some share of that pie? I think that's probably the genesis behind using
the new
this
equalization levy.
Equalization levy. That's
okay.
My sense.
Palmi, what is your take on this?
Sir, I think I completely agree with him. The interesting thing also is on a factual thing. I believe Amazon is one of the largest spenders on advertising is in India. Amazon worldwide has almost no advertising and the largest spend is in India. So obviously they're looking to connect to the consumer in a much larger way in India. And obviously as a businessman, nobody spends anything without getting anything in return. So I think the nexus of the original AMP controversy sort of comes into digital India as well, because you are looking to advertise, you're looking to en masse customers, and to sort of support Pinto's point is that you are then generating revenue. Okay. So even though your technology is lying outside, right. I think it's a mixed bag. It's one like those old EPC contracts in the traditional way. Is it divisible? Is it supply of manpower? Is it onshore, offshore? But now in this new age, it's about digital. This is the future, I think.
Right. So, sir, you think this is the good time for India to say goodbye to this traditional concept of PE, and equalization levy is the one which demolished those four pillars of the PE. And so how do you look at it? It's a good thing that India has taken the initiative and we are going ahead, and at least B2B transactions we are going to tax?
No, it is true, but that is only in a very limited way. See, so the equalization levy targets only the Googles of the world. So,
right, sir.
And it's only limited to online advertisement for the time being.
Right.
See, there are so many other services, there are digital services that are provided that take money out of India or the market economies. Like, for example, cloud computing,
right,
which is now the rage, and all kinds of services are provided.
Yes.
The most important source of income is business, and the source country taxation is limited by existence of permanent establishment.
Right, sir.
And permanent establishment has got certain connotations,
right, sir,
which are not in sync with
The changing
modern
time,
day,
and yes,
this
the
thing.
market practices.
Market
Yes,
practices.
sir.
So that's the reason we had actually the entire BEPS project originated from out of these companies, these digital companies.
Right,
Most
sir.
of the names that are associated with the BEPS project,
Sir.
it's Amazon, Google, Facebook, Apple,
Right,
they are all essentially digital companies and American companies.
Right, sir.
Because when people found that they earn a lot of money, but they don't pay any tax.
Right,
Why
sir.
don't they pay any tax? Because the rules of the game are such, the rules which were devised
Long
in the
back.
1920s
Right,
are
sir.
such that you had to have a fixed place of business or some kind of agency
Right, sir.
in the country concerned. So that's the origin of the project. Now what the OECD did is that they started with this, and in fact they said that the skewed distribution of taxing rights between
Yes,
the
sir.
market jurisdictions and the other jurisdiction is at the origin of some of these problems. That's
Right,
what
sir.
they stated.
Right.
But unfortunately, what happened is that in the final analysis, when in the final report, there were countries who were not willing to come on board.
Right.
So what has been done is that there was a task force on digital economy that was constituted. So decision was that task force on digital economy will continue working
And they'll give
and
some
they
report.
monitor the development in the digital space, and by 2020 they will review this.
Right, sir. Correct.
So in the meantime, the the tax bases of the market economies, including India, will continue to get eroded.
Correct.
So as a face saver, they said there are three options.
Right, sir.
One option is, some
The withholding tax, another was that
Yeah.
the nexus, the connection. The
new
dominant
nexus,
economic
withholding.
Right,
And
sir.
the third was
The equalization levy,
In
right,
fact, equalization seems to be if you read the report, it seems that it is the most preferred approach of the
Right, sir.
of the OECD. So what India has done is that as you know that UK and Australia,
They have gone
they
for
have
some-
also introduced the diverted profit tax,
Right, sir.
whereby essentially this question of the existence of permanent establishment
Yes, sir.
is somehow taken
Bypass
care
this.
of, bypassed.
Yes, sir. Completely.
So, and in India we have not gone there. We have adopted the equalization levy,
Right, sir.
and a limited scale income that is that is embedded in the service portion, service rendered by the non-resident,
Right, sir.
has been made exempt.
Right, sir. Correct.
So there is no double taxation there, and this has been made part of the Chapter 7 or Chapter 8
Yes,
of the Finance Act.
Finance
So it's
Bill,
not
yes,
part
sir.
of the Income Tax Act.
Right, it is not.
So it is not a question of the treaty. Conflict with the treaty also doesn't arise.
Okay. Yeah, that has been one of those, the criticisms of this equalization levy, some of the experts talking about it, that this is directly in conflict with that. And since India wanted to bypass the DTO obligations, they opted for this finance bill route rather than the IT Act. But what sir is saying, to what extent do you agree? What is your...
BEPS report, final report, action 1 did talk about equalization levy, but they said two things. One, they said that if a country want to bring in a domestic legislation on equalization levy, it has to respect the treaty obligations that it's entered into. Point 1. Point 2, they said that you also have to see that if your corporate tax fails because of the points that sir just pointed out on PE and other thing, see that whether there is a VAT which is leviable on this or not. Now, and the third point is that in what form and shape this tax has been brought into the statute. Now, if you look at these three things and apply that to the equalization levy which is proposed in the finance bill. Now, one, clearly it's on online advertising as we speak, but they have kept the powers with themselves to extend that to other services.
Right.
It's really there. Point 1. Point 2, it's on B2B. Now, on B2B, as I understand, there is a service tax on reverse charge anyway. When I, as a business, download something, download a software, for instance, which is lying on a server outside India, have to make a payment on a reverse charge, the government is anyway collecting a 15%. So it's not a case that India is denied the tax in any form altogether. at least on a B2B transaction. And the third point is that what is the nature of this tax? Because as Sir said, it's brought in by way of a Chapter 8 to the Finance Bill. It's not income tax. It's not an amendment to the Income Tax Act. They brought in, Section 161 to 177 in the Finance Bill.
Right.
So the question is that is it an income tax or is it a tax in lieu of income tax? What the exemption they have provided in Section 10, 1050 or whatever is to say that once we have levied a equalization levy, when we charge an equalization levy of 6%,
Okay.
any income embedded will not be taxed. But does it mean that it is an income tax? And if it is not, or if we have to debate, then the whole issue would be whether under the Constitution, who has the power to levy this tax on advertisement? Because tax on advertisement, the power under entry 55 is with the state government. It comes under the Union List 2 as per Article 246. Or is it under the residuary under Article 248?
Tax,
and why I say this thing, because the equalization levy is not applicable to J&K. It's not applicable to state of J&K, unlike our Income Tax Act.
Right.
So that means when it says that when a resident makes a payment to a non-resident for an online advertisement, so what is the meaning of the word resident here? Resident in India. What is the meaning of the word India? Does India include J&K or not? Because there is no reference to the definition of the Income Tax Act in this sense. So therefore, I think these are all the open questions, which to my mind, brings it to the other point which you mentioned, that, if you look at Section 90, subsection 2, which takes me to the treaty, it says that when the provisions of the treaty are beneficial vis-a-vis the provisions of the Act, then I can go to the treaty. Here, this equalization levy is not levied under the Act.
Right.
It is levied as per Chapter 8. So, whether a treaty will be applicable to me or not.
Okay, Mr. Peter, what do you think? Some of the key points which you highlighted, getting deeper into this, the legal jurisprudence, the definition of India, for instance. If it is not IT Act, then what definition should be taken? Are we going back to the General Clauses Act? Are we borrowing this definition from other acts? And maybe, some other technical things which you talked about, that what is income? Is it income? Can it be construed as an income? Or is it something else?
There are going to be major challenges until there are clarifications issued by the Income Tax Department. The very validly raised point, the definition of resident, the key aspect there is, first of all, whether this is subject to the Indian Income Tax Act or not. I think we are talking about whether we will get a credit, but before we get a credit, whether treaty is accessible in the first place is going to be a very key issue. So I think what needs to be done at the revenue level is definitely a clarification required on the nexus between the equalization levy and the Income Tax Act, because they put in clauses on both sides. Because this is in Chapter 8, there is an exemption provided in the Income Tax Act. The interplay between both of them definitely needs a lot of clarity. And at this point in time, I am sure there will be a lot of representations going on from businesses back to the department for clarifications.
Yeah, Palvi, you would like to add something here?
So I think the interesting point that he raised is on the service tax issue of downloads being already subject to service tax. So, I think that if it's already 14 or 15% taxed under an indirect tax, then another direct tax by the name of an equalization levy actually takes your effective tax rate to over 20%, which is what India was always taxing on gross basis of royalties and fees for technical services. So in a way, I think we are back to gross taxation of foreign income, Indian sourced income of foreign companies in this business.
But Mr. Zip, this has been called equalization. For instance, if I am a service provider in India, in any case I am paying service tax and I am also paying income tax. So far as this non-resident companies are concerned, even if there is a reverse charge mechanism, we are collecting service tax in India, but they are not paying anything so far as income tax is concerned. So that kitty is in any case going blank. So apart from that, sir, he raised another.
Why is it called equalization levy? So the question is that for the first time there is we are very, very concerned about the non-discrimination to the non-residents. We have got a special provision in the treaties.
Sure.
See, the Indian companies are being discriminated because they have to pay all the taxes. Whereas because of the interplay, the non-resident companies will particularly of this type, will get away without paying income tax. So that is you want to equalize this tax situation of both the set of players,
Right, sir.
and that's why you have
Equalization,
imposed
It's a level playing field. Is
level
provided.
playing field. Secondly, as the OECD itself says, the report says, in fact, they say that some countries impose.
Right.
I had earlier did a little bit of research and I found that the IRC, the US IRS, they do impose an excise tax
Yes, sir,
on
they have.
insurance.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
The section 4371 or whatever they call it. And in the interestingly in the India US tax treaty, it is covered under Article 2. So it is not that it is something completely new. The idea is this, and another important idea is, see, like the diverted profits tax also in UK. Basically, it is not you want to level the playing field, and if you want these companies, they can always have a PE in India and pay on a net basis. Nobody is complaining. Essentially, the complaint of the business is that I am being taxed at a higher level on withholding basis. Then please come and pay on net basis.
Right,
So
sir.
this is actually encouraged. This should actually encourage the digital companies to have a PE in India and pay tax on the net.
But so the additional point could be that most of these companies, in any case, are operating from low tax jurisdictions.
Yeah.
So there is hardly corporate tax they are paying. It's either Ireland or some of the tax havens in Europe, etc. So far as corporate tax are concerned, the liability, they have virtually no liability. It's either zero tax or maybe 2% tax, or they have private treaties, like in Luxembourg case.
Yeah, that's true.
So in any case, sir, so far as, so they are not being, sort of given a kind of ill treatment in India or something, or injustice being done to them. Equalization levy itself is so low, 6%. I think the credit should not be, it should not cause too much of heartburn.
6% on a gross basis, again, it will depend from a company to company.
It will, yeah.
But it may be quite high, given the fact that if you look at a lot of these companies which are providing online advertising in such a competitive space, if you look at, the profitability of these companies, it could, be ranging anywhere between maybe 10%, 15%, max maybe 20%. I'm just hypothetically saying.
So, but those are the advanced ones.
Exactly.
These new
Small ones
companies,
will be
the
even less.
Snapdeals and the Flipkarts of the world are still in loss.
Exactly. So, the big ones, there may be max, if you look at any large corporation and look at the profitability, it will not be more than that. And if you apply, a 40% tax rate on that, the Indian tax rate on non-resident, that will come to around 4% if you take a presumptive of 10. And then you divide that, split that between India and the foreign country. Assuming for a moment you take a 50-50 split, the tax rate comes to 2%, whereas with 6. What was the study done? All taxes subsumed, 3%. Right. Whereas here, you are saying 6%. So therefore, a 6% on a gross basis might be quite high. And the second thing what I will say is, as Mr. Sengupta just said, US levies an excise tax on insurance premium, okay? But they have brought that as a part of a treaty. So if their resident of a US suffers an excise tax, then he gets a credit under the treaty. So where is the enabling provision here? Because unless and until you have the enabling provision here,
it will take some time. It will also come. It will become a part of that.
No, it will require a discussion and negotiation with the other country.
Yeah, Mr. Pinto, anything else you would like to add here?
No, I think this is going to be critical because the key worry for a lot of these digital companies is right now it's only online advertising. And as Sir alluded to, I think there are much bigger fish out there and probably technologies that we are not even aware about. I think the key challenge for the tax authorities today is also to not wait for 4 or 5 decades to keep pace with technology. I think these sort of issues will need to be revisited every few years.
So now we will switch over to, since we are on the BEPS page, we will touch this C by C. So Mr. Pinto, would like to talk about this, the country by country reporting?
I think this is going to be an important game changer in international transfer pricing. I think this was talked about for a long time, and a lot of countries have already started implementing, and India has also gone ahead and implemented the 3-tier reporting structure for multinationals. The threshold is, relatively high, so it's not going to be something that will be applicable for all the MNCs in India. So 5,300 odd crores is the threshold for implementing a CBC. The key concept behind this is they want to look at your global allocation of income and taxes, along with what is your substance in each country. So they're really going down to the nuts and bolts of where your entire supply chain is, where are your people, where are your resources, where is your manufacturing, distribution, etc. And in light of those, what is really the taxes that you're paying in those various countries? There will be, sort of implementation challenges, teething troubles in the initial years as people start reporting. But I think it's a good step forward.
Right. Yeah, Palvi, you would like to?
So I think that there was always a sort of mistrust between the tax administrations and the businesses, and I think that OECD countries have traditionally been more transparent, and so I'm not surprised that this initiative and this advice has come through the OECD. India transfer pricing assessments has always been asking for this information,
Right.
and Indian subsidiaries or MNCs have been hesitant to give this information. So now I think it's sort of a hand in glove situation where globally they are moving to this in the OECD and India is moving very quickly.
Right.
Usually we've been an observer, we've been somebody who's objecting. We've never been the country that says, okay, this is the best initiative, let's do it.
Right.
So I think India will have a lot more information available to it during transfer pricing assessments, and maybe it will bring more objectivity into those assessments, now that issues of benefit test, etc. are somewhat getting settled, and our 8-10 issues in transfer pricing have reached high courts. So I think this is the new era of transfer pricing, and I think openness and transparency.
Yeah, Mr. Sandeep, you would like to add something?
A couple of points here. Yes, here the BEPS Action Report 13, whatever recommendations have been picked up by the government, including the threshold limit, 750 million euros is a limit mentioned there. So that's all good. The important point would be, from an Indian perspective, one, confidentiality of the data. So, when you have access to so much of data,
Right.
pertaining to the foreign organizations, I'm talking about, say, a subsidiary of a foreign MNC, where the master file and the CBCR is with the overseas jurisdiction, and the Indian officer has access to that. So how confidential that data would be? What is the mechanism that you have? What kind of a privilege, law of privilege you have in the act, or how you make it more strengthened so that the confidentiality of the data remains? Point one. Point two is that who are the people in the administration who will have access to that? Is it going to be the normal transfer pricing officer, or is it that there will be a special cell who will have an access to that? Because remember, BEPS is only saying that you have an access. Right. They are not saying that you have an access and you just start acting on it and start a rowing and fishing inquiry. So I think those are some of the key things that need to be taken into consideration, because it should not happen that an initiative which has started off, it's a good initiative.
So Mr. Sandeep has articulated the concern of most of those the MNCs, the kind of issues or the kind of doubts they will have with respect to the confidentiality of the data which is going to be shared. So how legitimate do you think this kind of concern could be?
No, the concern is legitimate. The confidentiality is a legitimate concern for the multinational groups.
But we have some directorate of TP now, so
no,
probably
it's
there
true.
will be
I am
TP.
not saying that the confidentiality should prevent us from getting those things. Confidentiality provision even now you have in income tax. So do you get any information about anyone?
Right, correct. It's not available, yes.
It's just not available.
Right,
You get, I don't know. There is nothing available for income. You do not even know who is prosecuted, who was this thing. The
Correct.
minimum information that is required for informed citizenry is not available.
Yes.
So correct. I do not see that this will become a stumbling block. But confidentiality issue will be there.
There should be some guidelines.
And I have checked a little bit about the actual legislation, and the the OECD has given a model legislation.
Okay, sir.
There is no difference, you know.
Okay, sir, I see.
Only thing is that there are certain things which they have, obviously they will have to think through, they will prescribe in the
Right, sir.
in the rules in future there.
Right,
so I am sure that the points that he had raised, who will have access and how they will be disseminated and all those things. So I am sure they will be taken care of.
Mr. Pinto, do you really think that this will result in, if not substantial, some noticeable reduction in TP disputes in the coming years?
I think it should definitely help. It's a good start in that direction. You know, once we look at a global information as opposed to, you know, just a bilateral information which we are currently reporting under the current transfer pricing documentation, it will give a much better holistic picture to the tax officer in India also as to how is this particular multinational group being globally taxed on its entire gamut of income and services. So that probably will, you know, it will reduce, in my sense, a little bit of the litigation time.
Okay, so this brings us to Sir patent box regime. That is another BEPS related thing. So Mr. Sandeep would like to comment on this.
So you're right. So BEPS, I think Action Report 5 or something talked about this patent, and again, the whole concept was that where the economic activity is happening, so that country should have the right over the rightful right over the incomes from those IPRs, rather than, you know, the legal ownership.
Right.
And also, I think in the context of you know, digital India, and also in the context of trying to promote research, real research, real R&D. So this you know, proposal is geared towards that where, you know, a resident, you do a real R&D here in India, get the patent registered in your name, then the income that you generate from exploitation of that patent will be taxed on a gross basis of 10%. So I think it's a good idea, you know, to have the patents being developed and registered here in India.
So it's a concessional tax
and
regime.
a concessional tax rate, though no deduction would be allowed, you know, against this income.
So this in Europe, for instance, the French economy, which is worldwide seen as patent box, you know, the hub, and very concessional tax regime, etc. So they also made a beginning like this only, sir.
There is interesting aspect. You see, it is not really out of the action point 5 is for countries to identify the harmful tax practices. You identify the regimes, which are the regimes which are harmful, and you are not supposed to.
Okay.
You are not supposed to have those
kind of practices.
And in fact, there are some countries, particularly the UK and UK most recently, which came out with a patent box regime and gave this concessional rate. So the question was whether this is harmful tax practice or not, because on the one hand you say that it is harmful.
Right.
So actually there was a political compromise in this case also. In the patent box regime, the initial thing was that this should not be allowed. Later on, they came up with a via media of nexus. You know, a modified nexus approach. So that means, okay, if actually this has been done in your country, then it will not be it will not be treated as harmful. What we have done is completely different, because we didn't have this thing. We had R&D, the what you call the accident.
Right, sir.
But what we have done is that we said, we have given this now to this was not there, so we have given it. So, and this will be in accordance with the nexus approach. So, this is not something which is arising out of the action plan.
On this note, let me wrap up this episode on BEPS related amendments proposed in the Finance Bill 2016, and I must thank all the guests for making it a highly enlightening and enriching debate. And the major takeaways for the North Block are, although India's initiative to go for the most preferred choice of the OECD, that is equalization levy, is timely and trend setting, but the nature of the levy, which is not a part of the Income Tax Act, would always be a debatable issue. So some of the questions which may shadow the levy for a long time to come are going to be relating to the definition of resident, income and India, which have not been defined by Chapter 8 of the Finance Bill. So the panelists also demonstrated their desire to see a nexus between the levy and the Income Tax Act, which the CBDT may like to clarify. The introduction of country-by-country reporting has largely been welcome, and it is likely to reduce TP litigation by providing desired information to TPOs. However, the concern with respect to the confidentiality of data furnished in the master file is to be addressed with some fresh guidelines. With respect to the patent box regime, all the panelists extended their support to such an initiative, which may help India realize the 2020 dream of our former President Dr. Abdul Kalam. Thanking you all for watching TIOL Tube.